The following is a presentation of Geekster Media.
Remember that show back then? Remember that show? Turn on the TV, time was always flying. Why did they have to end? So many shows you forgotten. Now that we've got a podcast, we can release all the shows from our hands. Yeah, will you be the most TV dudes you'll ever listen to? As long as we keep on talking sitcoms and cartoons from back in the day. Okay, we confess, we're obsessed, but we got a podcast to help you remember that show.
Now entering the arena, William Bruce West, key symbol, syndicator, discipline, too smart for TV dough.
Hey there, TV lovers and members of the World Martial Arts Council, to a hard-hitting, side-splitting, ninja-stomping episode of Remember That Show? The show where we revisit the obscure or forgotten TV shows of the 80s and 90s.
Now entering the arena, Adam Pope, key symbol, Vidiot, discipline, VHS Foo.
That's right, we're ready to roundhouse kick our way through a discussion about WMAC Masters. But first, we have to take a trip through our own TV-obsessed childhoods in a segment we call Theme Song. So, Will, our show today featured action that was not meant to be emulated by children, but no doubt inspired many kids to don a gi with dreams of breaking wooden boards using the power of their tiny fists. So did you ever get involved in martial arts as a kid?
I feel like we all did. We grew up in this window where we all did martial arts and soccer. I don't know what that is. I don't know anybody who played football or baseball. It was this window where soccer had come to America. I know the World Cup was a big deal around then, but yeah, I did Taekwondo. I know back then it was a catch-all to just be oh, he takes karate. It's like Dracula's. Oh yeah, Bobby takes karate. But it was Taekwondo. And I still don't know why. My mom just came home one day and was oh, I signed you up for karate. And it's I wasn't being bullied or whatever. I'm sure some doctor was probably he's too fat. He needs to get in a sport or something. Because that was why I was doing soccer, he needs an activity. So I did Taekwondo. It was less than a year. I think I was third grade because that's around that time. But also I remember it was the same time Saved by the Bell premiered, because I remember I came home from class one night and it was the Saturday morning preview of hey, tomorrow morning we've got this new show with the kids from Bayside High. So all my roads lead back to Saved by the Bell. So I took it right up until the test for your yellow belt. I did not take that test. I do not have the yellow belt. I think the gi is still in my house somewhere. But that was me with martial arts. How about you?
Oh, well, see, yeah, definitely. I understand what you're saying, where it was just prerequisite. If you're a kid, you're going to go and you're going to learn to do your kata or whatever they're going to call it. You're going to have to do your demonstration. Now, in my case, one of my neighbors was a pretty well-known karate instructor. His name was Bob Barrow, and he was trained by Chuck Norris. And he had a dojo on the upper floor of our local bowling alley, and he would give out autographed photos of Chuck if you achieved some real skill. And I never did. My favorite thing he would have us do is jump kick high fives. So he would put his hand up, then you had to run and jump and kick it. And I was oh, I wish I could do that. I don't think I ever did. But I attended classes probably for about 6 months. It was end of 1989 to 1990. I made it to orange belt. But then I just lost interest, I was getting into comics at that point. I was just I don't want to do karate. I want to read comics. But to be honest, when it came to Bob Barrow, I was more interested in hanging out with his kids at their house because they had one of those projection big screen TVs, where you pulled the drawer out from underneath and it had the 3 colored lights. And it did a picture that bounced off a mirror and then onto a screen. Did you ever see this style?
I never knew that's how they worked. I didn't have one of those friends.
Yeah, I mean, like it was pretty crazy. I didn't know anybody else either. That's why I wanted to go to their house. I'm like, they were playing Nintendo on a big screen TV. But it was the thing, unfortunately, with this style, because it was projected onto a screen, if there was light coming in your window, everything was bleached out. So you could just like certain spots of the screen, you couldn't see anything. They had curtains, I think, but it was just like that design didn't last for a reason. But it was the first big screen TV I ever saw. So the question I have though, Will, is did you feel people looked down on you because you were doing Taekwondo and not officially karate? Like, did you feel a hierarchy?
Nah, because honestly, like, around here, it was pretty balanced as far as like the disciplines. Like looking back, there were fewer karate places than I remembered, and like that was back when you still had like local commercials. So it was like Kim's Karate, or we had this one where it's like nobody bothers me. Like Chad will remember that one. It was pretty evenly like Taekwondo or karate. Like my question for you though, was Bob ever like, hey Adam, man, you just missed Chuck?
Well, that's what we were all waiting for. Like, when is Chuck Norris coming to the dojo?
Like we were grilling up steaks. He was kicking birds out of the air. You missed it, man. But I was gonna say, like, the dark secret was Bob was signing all those pictures. Like he met Chuck once at the airport, and he's just been like taping because we didn't have Photoshop. He's been taping himself in pictures.
I wondered about that, and then I went and looked up old issues of Black Belt magazine, and Bob Barrow is in Black Belt magazine. And he is, where there are like action jean ads for, Chuck Norris had his own line of jeans that you could find. And so then like there'd be an article about Bob Barrow doing whatever, so definitely he was a legit guy, which was kind of cool.
That's
all right.
awesome.
But Will, there weren't enough Kung Fu studios. So let's see how that maybe plays into this show getting off the ground as we find out how it got the green light.
The Bruce Lee films of the 1970s and David Carradine starring in the Bruce Lee conceived TV series Kung Fu raised the profile of martial arts and entertainment for U.S. audiences. But it was Ralph Macchio's turn as Daniel LaRusso in 1984's The Karate Kid that caused children nationwide to look for their own Mr. Miyagi in local strip malls. The film inspired 2 sequels, animated Saturday Morning Adventures, and a toy line. The popularity of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon series just 3 years later created an undeniable phenomenon across all media, and the arrival of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in 1993 pushed the concept into the stratosphere. Bottom line, martial arts action on television was a proven ratings winner and meant big bucks for toy manufacturers. For older kids and their dads, plenty of martial arts action could be enjoyed on the silver screen as well, in films starring Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, and for the true connoisseur, Jackie Chan. Adam, who was your martial arts idol as a kid?
Oh, I mean, it was definitely Daniel LaRusso, because I think I watched that movie when I was about 6 and I just got hooked on the idea of karate. Some company put out an official like Miyagi-Do headband like he wears in the movie. And I have pictures of me wearing that in my living room, in my underwear, doing my karate demonstration for the families.
So we cannot post those pictures.
Unfortunately not. I can crop it, I guess. The only important part is the headband. But I remember like I played the Nintendo game at a friend's house, and there's a mini game in that from the second movie where you broke the ice blocks. You had to chop through them, and that was like the coolest thing to me. Surprisingly, given my love for the franchise, I only lasted through like 3 seasons of Cobra Kai, but I was there from the beginning. Like I subscribed to the short-lived YouTube Red streaming service to get the first season before it moved to Netflix. I was excited, but then I got tired of kids fighting each other. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like the idea of kid gangs karate fighting each other everywhere. So
there goes my idea for our next podcast, which is bum fights and kid gangs.
But Will, did you, like I could guess where it might have been found, your idol, but let's see if I'm right.
I want you to guess first.
Okay. Because I mean, obviously, like I think Power Rangers. So I'm like, oh yeah, he watched those Jason David Frank Tommy instructional karate videos or something. But then I was thinking, you know what? Maybe it was Jackie Chan because you brought him up on the recent episode of Wizards that we talked about some stuff.
I'm gonna have to say it was Power Rangers because
Okay.
even though Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out first, there's not a lot of martial art. Like they fight and like they have their sensei and all that, but I feel like it got toned down into wacky violence after a while, especially once like England was like, oh, they're hero turtles now and things like that, you know. So it was Power Rangers, but it wasn't until Tommy comes along. He's the greatest ranger of all time. If you disagree, this is not the podcast for you. But like, it was Power Rangers. And like I started to realize why through watching this show we're talking about today, because something that happens with Power Rangers that like most people don't realize because they grew up and got like lives is the Power Rangers we fondly remember, like the Mighty Morphin era of like, oh, they're fighting putties in the woods and like you can see their hits aren't connecting and things like that. That doesn't last long. Like once they hit that era where they're like rebranding it every year, it shifts less to you having a martial arts background and it's just like, are you attractive? So like the fighting disappears. We get one season where the guy just shoots really well. You know, like that's what he's known for. It's like, oh, Carter Grayson kept that clip on him. You know, he just shot people a lot. So it's like, it's this era where it's like, you could tell they had training, you know, like even though, and I remember they used to do, again, kind of connected to this show, they did a now message from the Power Rangers, which was their like public service announcement at the end of every episode. And there's one where they're explaining like, don't do this at home because we're not really fighting. What you see is a choreographed dance and no one is getting hurt. And while watching this again, you can see it's a choreographed dance. So like, that's really what did it for me. But yeah, my hero, it was Jason David Frank because he wasn't just like fighting, it was his sounds. He made sounds that you had never heard from other martial artists before. We all knew like hi-ya and ha ha, but he was like sik-ya, sik-sik. It's like, what is that about? You know, someone like trained him to do it, but like that set him apart, you know? So I was like, it's Jason David Frank. He still makes me want to fight. God rest his soul.
R.I.P. Yes, indeed. Okay, well, here's the thing, though, Will. So there was plenty of it on TV at the movie theater, but in the early 90s, 2 video games were undeniably ruling the roost at local arcades and pizza parlors, inspiring violence on playgrounds. These were Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat. Now, one was filled with colorful animated fighters using superpowers to beat each other up, while the other digitized actual humans in costumes that were able to release copious amounts of blood from their opponents with each hit or rip out their spinal column, burn them to a crisp. But by 1993, kids were able to bring the fighting game action home to the Super Nintendo, to the Sega Genesis, which meant that when they weren't at karate practice or watching Ninja Heroes save the day, kids were guiding digitized warriors through deadly fighting tournaments, inspired in part by Van Damme's R-rated film Bloodsport. Huge impact that movie had, which also inspired the real-life Ultimate Fighting Championship events on pay-per-view, which were like the stuff of legend at the time. I don't know if your friends ever bought an UFC pay-per-view, but my friends did, and we watched it. We're like, oh, I can't believe this. Tito Ortiz, he's an animal. Anyway, but Mortal Kombat in particular sparked huge controversy, obviously with its gory finishing moves, leading to government investigations, which caused the creation of a ratings board for video games to help parents decide what games were appropriate for their offspring. Not government mandated necessarily. This is kind of like comic books did back in the day when they created the Comics Code Authority. They're like, oh, no, we'll police ourselves. Don't worry. Yeah, we'll put a rating on it. We'll decide what's appropriate. But with all this parental concern over violence in media, it only made sense that a safer version, a more sanitized version of these martial arts competitions would be developed for TV in this era. So, Will, did you ever get flack from your mom for playing fighting games? Or did you hear about it like from church? Or like, oh, these are terrible?
No, because I didn't have them, but like my mom would never have let me. Like if somebody gave it to me, it might be a different kind of deal. But like we've talked about my mom before. So like Mortal Kombat just would not have flown. And I didn't have a system that could play it because I stopped at 8-bit NES. I never jumped any higher. So that wouldn't have been a possibility. I mean, my mom hated X-Men. Like if it had a bad cover, it might disappear. And like she would play this game, like I'd be looking for it. And at first she'd like act like she didn't know what happened to it. And eventually she'd be like, I threw it away. And it's like, I don't want that in my house. So like this, no. And honestly, I was going through some weird stuff that I still deal with when it comes to like death, where like Mortal Kombat hit me a little harder than it hit everyone else in the world because my father went off to a tournament and died. No, it's like, no, because like I really did take to heart the mortal aspect of it. Like to this day, I still have these questions of like, what does Johnny Cage tell his family? It's a little easier for him, like, oh, I'm going off to film a movie. And then, like, does the studio cover for his death? What does his life insurance policy do? Because that's technically kind of suicide. He knew there was a slim chance of him winning. And that's how I think today. So Mortal Kombat, I was more of a Street Fighter 2 kid, if we're being honest. Because watching somebody's spine get ripped out kind of sticks with you for a while. But I feel like you played it with friends. I don't think it would have been in your house, but every now you throw me for a loop.
So the only one I rented and brought home was Clay Fighter. If you remember Clay Fighter, it was kind of like it looked stop motion and there was like a snowman or a Viking lady. It was just all these like weird goopy characters, so it didn't seem as violent. So I was playing the real fighting games. They were like a guilty pleasure I enjoyed at other people's houses for sure. Like I originally encountered Mortal Kombat at an arcade and played it there, and Street Fighter was at my local Pizza Hut, so I would play that. But I really did play more Mortal Kombat in junior high because my friend Brett, he lived across the street from the school. So every day at 3 p.m., we would just go fire up his Sega Genesis and we duke it out playing mainly Mortal Kombat 2 and 3. Like those were the ones we liked the best. I mean, 3 to a lesser extent. But the crazy thing is, though, we were so into it, his mom took us to see Mortal Kombat Live, which was a traveling tour. And we went and saw the show that it was at the Pond of Anaheim where the Mighty Ducks played hockey. And it actually featured performers from WMAC Masters in the cast. Like Hakeem Alston was playing Jax and stuff like that. But this is my random story about that event, though. So halfway through this show, which it was even more sanitized than WMAC Masters, like kids knew what they wanted for Mortal Kombat. They were not delivering. And so
kill him, finish him.
But the lady sitting next to us with her kid was like, you see those empty seats down there that are closer to the stage? We're going to go down and sit in them. And then she'd ask my friend's mom, do you want your boys to come with us? You can just see us down there. Well, I'll just take them down there. Total stranger. And Brett's mom said, okay. Like looking back now, I'm like, oh no, just send him off, with a stranger. So we wandered down there, and no sooner had we sat down than a security guard just comes down immediately because that area was not open for anybody to sit in. That's why it was, empty. And so she's like fishing around her purse. Oh, I know my tickets are here somewhere. So like 5 minutes, and then she like pulls them out. She's like, yeah, I think it says I'm supposed to be here. Ma'am, you need to go back to your regular seats, so we're all embarrassed coming out there. But I was just like, I couldn't believe, that we almost got kidnapped at the Mortal Kombat Live show. It's just like,
I thought you were gonna say that those turned out to be the blood seats because we weren't getting what we wanted, and then suddenly this blood just
that would have been amazing. Bring your own blood. That's what I think needed to happen at that show. But yeah, so I was super into it. I loved Mortal Kombat, the movie. Like I saw it multiple times in theaters because I had a big crush on Bridget Wilson from Billy Madison. So then I was like, oh, she's Sonya now and she's kicking butt. Then I bought the movie on VHS and watched that for the entire summer of like 1996, the year later. So yeah, so definitely I was playing them a lot, even though I wouldn't call it my identity, but it was just such a part of pop culture. Like there were even TV specials about the making of the video game. And I remember like a Sunday morning, like recording that so I could watch it over and over again. And there were at WMAC Masters cast members that were part of the video games too. So we'll get into all of that, but let's find out what was this show about, Will? And surely you will tell us, what does WMAC stand for? It can't be a TV station. So tell us all about it in our elevator pitch.
Well, WMAC Masters was a syndicated martial arts action series that ran for 2 seasons between 1995 and 1997. It was developed by Norman Grossfield, who would go on to produce the Pokemon series for U.S. markets, and Renaissance Atlantic Entertainment, who were the co-producers of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. WMAC stood for World Martial Arts Council, which was a fictional organization that oversaw fighting tournaments for martial artists of varying styles to prove their superiority by gaining medallions from the opponents they defeated, which would be collected on their dragon belt. When the belt was full, the competitors could challenge the reigning champion for a chance to win the Dragon Star Trophy, the proof that they were the best martial artists in the world. The show featured male and female stunt performers in choreographed battles meant to look like real competitions, mixed with backstage vignettes that often taught life lessons to show the humanity of the fighters. Each fighter had a key symbol or code name that was used in addition to their own name when introduced. Characters like Hakeem Alston, aka The Machine, Bridget Riley, aka Baby Doll, Herb Perez, that name always makes me laugh, as Olympus, or Christine Bannon Rodriguez, aka Lady Lightning. Also, the first season was hosted by Bruce Lee's daughter, Shannon Lee, who presented the rankings and rules of the ongoing tournament. Adam, did you watch WMAC Masters during its original airings?
I definitely did. I mean, anything Fox Kids for me, like I was just going to give it a chance, and especially Saturday mornings, and that's when this was playing in my area. Now, I'm pretty sure I only watched the first season, or that's the only season that my local Fox affiliate aired. Maybe I just grew up, because by 97, I was in high school, so maybe I was finally not going to watch it anymore. But the reason was, I was missing shows like American Gladiators, and this other random one that I want to cover someday called Knights and Warriors. I don't know if anybody remembers that show, but I love me some Knights and Warriors. So I tuned into WMAC Masters thinking it was going to be like real martial arts fights. That's what it seemed like. But either way, I also was very entranced by the Universal Studios connection, because I loved that theme park. I loved all the shows that always filmed an episode there, the various sitcoms and things. So the fact that they were filming it at Universal Studios added a lot to my interest here. But how about you? Were you tuning in?
Oh yeah, this is where we need audience participation, because I don't think it's a Fox Kids show, but it aired primarily on Fox affiliates. And so I watched it because during, when we were growing up, there were certain signals. We've talked about MASH, where MASH means you've stayed up too late. And wrestling typically meant it was the end of cartoons. It was either wrestling or Soul Train here. And so at this point, wrestling has left syndication. WWF Superstars has gone to cable at this point, which is when I leave wrestling until SmackDown, because that's when we got another free show. So this took the place of WWF Challenge and WWF Superstars, at least in this market. So I watched it again, kind of like you. I don't know if I watched the second season, or I didn't watch it religiously. I dropped in here and there, and it's a very confusing show if you care about the storyline. If you just want to see choreographed martial arts action, it gets the job done. But there is a plot that wasn't really apparent to me then, that's apparent to me now. But yeah, it was a drop-in show, because also in this market we had this show called It's Academic, which is all these trivia teams from local high schools compete, and that would shift the NBC schedule. So the first Saved by the Bell would actually air after everything else, which would be bad if there was a two-parter because you see part 2 before part 1. So it would air after TNBC ended, which meant it's airing at noon instead of 10 a.m. And so I was juggling between that and WMAC Masters, and TNBC eventually won out.
That is interesting how you mentioned the signifier there, that this is the end of the morning, essentially, the programming. We're going to see some fighting. But as I mentioned, so each episode did proudly announce that it was filmed at Universal Studios Florida, so not Hollywood that I was very familiar with, but they filmed on a soundstage that they called the WMAC Arena, which featured a rotating platform that could also be converted into a steel cage-like battle dome, and many of the fights took place on the stages that were built for Universal Studios rides and stunt shows, and so that was really interesting to see if you recognize it, like, oh, that's where King Kong is. But then to draw in those video game loving kids that we've been talking about, each fighter had a health bar or a power meter, whatever you want to call it, displayed on screen during the fights that would deplete with each hit until they were eliminated. So that's how you knew the fight was over. Now, adding to the fun, though, were an endless wave of masked ninjas who would attack the fighters in between the one-on-one battles. So that was just creating more nonstop action, which was great. There was also one instance of a mixed doubles fight where male and female competitors fought as duos against another team. And then occasionally the Masters would also perform challenges like breaking blocks of ice or have cinder blocks smashed on their stomach by a sledgehammer while laying on a bed of nails, or walking across hot coals, just all those crazy feats of strength or whatever. Now, as Will was mentioning, by the second season, the show kind of abandoned the idea of these life lesson flashback vignettes in favor of storylines, and specifically a storyline involving the infiltration of a rebel faction called Jukido, which was breaking rules during the tournament. And backstage, there was new people who would come in, they were trying to turn other fighters to their side. People wouldn't answer questions. They were just very shady. And so the whole point, though, they had this ultimate goal of stealing the Dragon Star. And that's what everybody was worried about. And so that paranoia over who was secretly part of Jukido ran rampant throughout every episode of season 2. And like I say, some of these newer people like Tracer and Chameleon and Wizard, and then somebody was a double agent. And there's just all this back and forth stuff happening there. So they really did at least try to up their game in the second season. Didn't last, it was canceled after those 2 seasons, not with any real explanation. I'm sure it was just, there's not much more we can do with this, and nobody's buying it for a 3rd season, so there we are. But they did have quite a roster of folks that would come in and out, which I'm sure we'll talk about here. But Will, as far as the elements of the show, is there anything that you feel I missed? Is there some other thing that they would weave in there?
Well, the one thing I think we need to talk about, because it doesn't really fit in a cheer, or, well, it's kind of a jeer for me. They tried to lend legitimacy to it in the first season with Shannon Lee, because I think we've moved away from it now, but this is still that era where Bruce Lee is the alpha and omega of martial arts, which he opened a lot of doors, but I don't know a lot about Shannon's background, but I will say that her brother's body wasn't even cold yet and she took this job. It's kind of tacky. And in the pilot, she's wearing this costume that looks like she stole it from the chief from Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. It's that same zoot suit kind of person in charge outfit, but she's clearly just there to lend legitimacy of well, we have this World Martial Arts Council, so of course we have a member of the Lee family. Because at first I thought it was oh, Shannon Lee just happens to be the announcer person, but they weave it into the storylines of you heard what Shannon said about her father. Bruce used to think that water was the most powerful. I was really? I don't know. There are people where that probably worked, and it probably worked at the time, but looking back, it just feels crass. It's if you could find a Kennedy grandkid and make them the spokesperson for the Texas Book Depository. It's just kind of that's not cool.
But it also felt like she was never really like portrayed as a human being. She was like, basically a news anchor for the World Martial Arts Council. And I guess that was the other thing. It's not like she would show up backstage with the fighters and interview them or talk to them. She wasn't a mean Gene. She was just a talking head at the beginning and middle of an episode, in the first season. So yeah, it definitely was wise to get rid of that element because it just felt like it would stop the show dead whenever Shannon showed up looking like a realtor, like her picture should be in the corner of a notepad that got left on your door, So that
Shannon Lee selling houses in the neighborhood.
So definitely a good point there. But yeah, let's find out what there was to like about this series in our cheers. Here's what I'll say. You were talking about with Shannon lending some legitimacy to it all, but most of the cast had something to be proud of in terms of their martial arts prowess. Even if they're not out for blood, they were legitimately good fighters. Like, for example, you can find compilation videos on YouTube of your buddy Herb Perez, aka Olympus, just knocking people out with kicks to the head in the Olympics. And I'm like, is that a legal move in the Olympics? You can kick people in the head? Because people are going out cold like constantly, and he got a gold medal. So
yeah, his name is Olympus because he won the gold medal at the Olympics. I do like the persona that they tried to craft around these people. I don't know if the actual martial artists embodied the theme that was applied to them. It's kind of like Vince McMahon trying out angles on people. It's like, I never got Olympus from Herb Perez. It's just, it so happens he won the gold medal. But there are other people like Red Dragon Chris Casamassa. I loved his name. He's the one thing I have remembered for 30 years because I just go to school and be like, I'm Chris Casamassa.
Well, he was the best, though. He was definitely the star of the group, I feel like, in terms of charisma. And by the second season, he actually gets even more tan, and he has an earring, and he gets a haircut. He's looking more like a star, too. But, so definitely there was that element of it where you're just they at least tried to explain every name. That was, the initial few episodes is the backstory of everybody's name, especially Hakeem. Hakeem also, why do they call you the Machine? And he's teasing it until he gets to his story, But also, I remember flipping through cable one day. It was ESPN2, and I saw Bridget Riley competing in kickboxing for real. And it was intense because she was getting kicked in the face and punched in the face, so she's swelling up and it was a real match. I was like, oh, so that's what it would be like if they were actually fighting on WMAC Masters. So they weren't just glorified stunt performers, even though they kind of were. It was like you were bringing up earlier, Johnny Cage in the Mortal Kombat universe in the movie especially. He could fight well on screen in choreographed fights, but he wanted to prove that he was the real deal in a tournament. So a lot of these competitors were still competing in different places in addition to getting film work and stuff like that, which is kind of cool.
I also like that it fits in this era because you can tell that Renaissance was involved with it. It's the Power Rangers layout, it's the choreographed dances made to look like fights, but it's also kind of when you're talking about the battles, they have to fight the ninjas first. So it's the putties, and then they wear them down, and then they get to face each other, but then they throw the ninjas back in, so they got to fight the ninjas, and they got to fight each other. So it's it builds on that structure, and if you're used to that, and you just want to see people fighting, then that's what it was good at that first season. It gets too muddled second season when they want to put an episodic story in there, because that's not good for syndication. You don't know what order these episodes are going to be aired in. And so trying to weave this mystery throughout 13 episodes was risky. But that first season where it's just hey, we're here to fight. That's all I wanted.
As silly as the power meters, for example, it's like a video game. They actually did help build in tension, because when a fighter was down to one hit or the fighters are tied, you're how's it going to go? You have something to keep an eye on. Because if it was real competition, it'd just be they're getting points or you're waiting for a knockout. You're not going to understand what they're being, rated by, And so in this case, you can actually anticipate maybe an outcome, have a reaction either way. Oh, I didn't expect that. But also, I really liked the variety of the fighting areas and then the different rules that they would have for different battles, because that kept things fresh. It wasn't just like the same style of matchup like it would be in a video game every time. It's just like one-on-one fighting each other. Like, it was always going to be cooler if there's a random like barrel fire in the background, or there's rings on chains that you could swing on or whatever. And it was pretty awesome that, you know, you had that constant threat of the ninjas interfering. There were actually several matches where like there's like this audience of ninjas that are surrounding the spinning platform, and you know, they could eliminate a fighter. That would happen. It was unpredictable that way. But also sometimes the fighters would just jump into the crowd and start preemptively beating up all the ninjas. Like, it's hilarious. Like, why are you fighting them? You're trying to win over here.
This would be a jeer to most, but I'm not most, where like, I like the season 1 public service announcement aspect of it. That's always been my favorite part of like 80s and 90s like programming, is that forced like educational and instructional component they had to put in there. Because like sometimes some of these kids, that was the only way they were learning this stuff, you know? Some were like latchkey kids, parents weren't always around. There are all these things that like they expect us to learn at home, but the people at home expect us to learn from school. And I like that. And I still do. I don't know if you're familiar, because you're a good parent, so you keep your kids away from the internet, I'm sure. But like Darman, have you ever heard that name before? Darman makes these things called like morality plays. They're really low budget. They star people that you've never seen before. And I don't think anyone has ever gone to success, because he's kind of like Haim Saban, where he's not paying like union. Like, you can't be in SAG and do a Darman thing. But it's that same deal of like, it's a hokey 30-minute thing of like, it's gonna teach you a lesson. There's a girl who has been told she looks like Sabrina Carpenter, so she wants to go to the Sabrina Carpenter concert, and she's mad at her dad because he's poor and he can't buy her tickets. So then she's just gonna dress up and try to trick security and make them think she is Sabrina Carpenter. And she learns like the life lesson of like, your parents work hard and don't be ashamed of them, but also don't lie and all this other stuff. They're fine, straightforward, but they're also funnier because there are a lot of like influencers who just kind of do the Mystery Science Theater treatment to them, like, oh, here's this guy, what's this loser gonna do, you know? Like, I like that content. There used to be this shady organization. I call it shady because I've never been able to track where the money comes from, but it's the Foundation for Living Well, where it's like, if there was a channel for that just came to your market and they don't have advertisers yet, they always had advertising from this, like the Foundation for a Better Life. It'll be like, smile, pass it on. You know, it was almost like those like WWJD commercials they sneak into the Super Bowl. But this one is really like supposedly nonpartisan, non-denominational. It's just like kindness. It grows where you plant it. You know, like as cheesy as that stuff is, you watch it enough, it starts to bear fruit after a while. So I like that aspect of it, because even the scariest people on WMAC Masters, like Machine, his whole gimmick, you would think, if you were building this character, you would think he was in a horrific accident and they turned him into a cyborg, because he's got the like laser eye every cyborg has to have. He's got like a metal staff. He's got like a cyborg arm and leg, and none of that happened. You know, like they don't lean into, like none of that happened. He's called Machine because he was overconfident and he broke his arm and his leg in like a sparring match. And during his recovery, he reflected on how he ended up there, and he realized he had to become a machine. He had to have discipline and like self-control to achieve his goals. So the next time he faced that opponent, he's like, I've got something for you I've been waiting to give to you for a long time. And he's like, what I didn't need was a fight. What I gave him was a handshake. And like he shakes his hand and he apologizes and he thanks him for imparting that life lesson onto him. And that's what shaped these people. Now, there are some people like Turbo, I don't think we get one from, and he's basically like, what if Casey Jones wore a leather vest?
Yeah.
You know? And like, so some of them I would love that story from, but like, we don't hit the whole roster, because even season 1, I'd say there's like 12, and only like 8 of them got action figures, which is probably why the show got canceled, because as we know with all children's focused programming, it's meant to sell toys. If you're not selling toys, you don't get renewed. So Bandai, who made Power Rangers toys, also did the toys for WMAC Masters. But it's that weird stylized era when Bandai had to start making American figures instead of importing the Japanese stuff. And those figures aren't great because they're designed to execute an action feature. Like, it's the same time Power Rangers Season 3 is putting out the like Ninjetti figures. It's those same designs for WMAC Masters. So kids weren't gonna glom onto them. But morality play aspect of it, I think that's what it does best.
Well, and they didn't have any of the female characters get an action figure, which, you know, again, falls into the tropes of action figure, you know, manufacturing at the time. Oh, it's a boy action line. Girl figures aren't going to sell. But I wish there was one character who did get one, because Sophia Crawford, aka Chameleon, who's this British gal that comes in for season 2, as you often say, she was 90s hot as compared to like the very butch Lady Lightning. The girl next door looks of baby doll, the reserved look of princess. A Black Widow, she was my style. But either way, like leotard and tights goes a long way for me. I'm an 80s kid, you know? So
the Black Widow was a quitter.
Yeah, she relinquishes. And we should say that is another cool thing about the show. The Dragon Star changes hands a lot. Like, a lot of people get a chance to win and challenge for it and all of that. But for me, Sophia Crawford is so cool because they added an extra gimmick to her, which was that her name is Chameleon. So literally her costume would change colors, but that must have taken forever to film, because what would happen is she'd be fighting in a green costume and then the camera would cut away and then she would jump back onto screen. Now she's wearing a pink costume or a teal costume. That meant they would have to stop filming after one move. She'd have to go change and then come back and finish the fight, which is crazy to me that they added that complication in there.
Or they filmed the fight 3 different times all the way through. That's the way you should do it, because the continuity on that would be insane if they're like, okay, this audience member was here, he was here. Like, I would just film it 3 different times and then splice.
You're probably right, from different angles that they had to shoot anyway. Okay, that maybe makes more sense. But the other thing that's interesting about her name is Chameleon, but she had a pet iguana.
Yes, because they thought we were dumb.
Yeah, it was just like, but a real chameleon, I don't think is going to show up on screen. They're kind of small in comparison. They needed something big, and it would like crawl on the stage and stuff, and then she'd carry it around with her everywhere. But yeah, so Sophia Crawford had my attention for sure. But like, in terms of like my favorite as a kid, it was Hakeem Alston. Like, he's the machine. I used to make my own outfits, like his cyborg outfit out of cardboard and tinfoil and stuff. So it's just like, Hakeem's my guy, man. And then he was in the Mortal Kombat movie, and I'm like, yes, like, he's so awesome. Which we should say real quick. So there were 2 brothers on the show. There was Ho Sung Pak and there was Ho Young Pak, and they were actual brothers. But Ho Sung Pak is the model for Liu Kang in the first 2 Mortal Kombat movies, which is pretty awesome. He also was Shang Tsung. But then Chris Casamassa, your favorite guy, he was Scorpion in the movie. And then Hakeem Alston was also just like a random fighter. I think he's the first guy that Liu Kang has to fight on the beach, and then Shang Tsung sucks out his soul. So there was a lot of familiar faces, but the connection to Mortal Kombat was very strong.
And even like back to Power Rangers, they're saying like a lot of them were like the stunt workers from Power Rangers. And I read somewhere that Mike Chat, his name's really long, but like most people just call him Mike Chat. Like, apparently he was in WMAC Masters. I don't know where. Maybe he was like a ninja, because he's not credited.
No, he is season 2 wizard. So he's Warlock's brother, even though
right.
brothers.
Because Mike Chat is the Blue Ranger from, oh my God, Lightspeed Rescue. Yeah, he's the water one. That's right before it's about to leave Fox. So it's still that kind of like relationship going on.
All these actors, I mean, they're essentially actors working in Hollywood, but usually not with speaking roles as often, I think. A few of them got featured performer status and different things. And like, Ho Sung Pak, to me, just feels like he should have been headlining his own movies. And maybe he was, but he was pretty awesome. Like, I just feel like, you know, he's like in the Philippines making movies or something, most likely. But yeah, so was there anything else that you could point to as a plus for the show, or is it time to move on, Will?
It's time to move on.
Yep, that's right. It's time for the beatdown as we get to our jeers.
Boo! Boo! Boo!
Yeah, so I don't remember how bad this show is. You know, like it was a different time, and I knew how bad Power Rangers was, but I knew what they were going for. This really is going for Mortal Kombat, but broadcast syndicated TV version. So it's like we went to Mortal Kombat for the blood and you weren't getting that. So the production value of this thing, I'm looking at it at first and it reminded me of the Ice Capades. Now, most people forget about the Ice Capades because eventually Disney on Ice came along and people think they're the same thing. They are not. Like the Ice Capades used to have like former Olympians and stuff like that, and eventually like Dorothy Hamill, but eventually they would get themed. So when Disney on Ice came along, it's no surprise people just carried that along thinking they're the same. But I remember I saw like Smurfs on Ice. I was a regular at the Ice Capades at the Capitol Center in Largo where the Capitals played, you know? And so it had that to it. But then I started really thinking I had never been to Disney until like this year. Like I had been to Disney for work like twice where they sent us to Hollywood Studios like for the evening one night. But like the family and I did Disney this year and we did the Lion King show, and that's what this is. Like it, like the you were saying you liked the Universal Studios connection. This is a theme park stage show. That's all it is. And I mean, I guess that's good at the time when maybe not everybody could afford or have the resources or be close enough to a theme park. This is kind of cool to get on TV. But now it's sort of like this is all over YouTube. I've got most of the Lion King thing on my phone. It's just kind of like when you make that connection of like this is just the Universal Studios martial arts stage show, it really kind of loses something to it, because then you realize that the morality play and the flashbacks is just padding. They really took like maybe let's say 145-minute martial arts exhibition and then chopped it up amongst 13 episodes of the first season, and there's your show. So like it's almost like, yeah, it didn't sell toys, but it seemed like this is the kind of thing that Universal Studios were going to keep doing anyway. So like how much budget did they need to give us that third season?
And a theme park stunt show is meant to be seen once. So
Yeah.
when you're putting it on weekly, now it's a whole other issue, because you're like, eventually you learn all their moves, and you know, like with pro wrestling, they're always upping the stakes, or there's swerves, or there's whatever that like kind of keep it fresh, even though most of the wrestlers have their move set also. But here it's just like, oh, well, I've seen the spin kick, or I've seen, you know, like I know what you're gonna do next. So it gets less exciting with each subsequent episode. And also, like you're saying, if you're trying to add a storyline into it, the cast, they're likable enough, but they're obviously not great actors. And it's really tedious to sit through the vignettes and the flashbacks because it's written for young kids. So the whole crew seems like they're fifth graders at their level of humor and competitiveness, and like the jokes they make at each other's expense. Like, you know, they're all like cussing and telling inappropriate jokes when the camera's off. But here, like, it's just like, well, I'm going to get you next time. Or they're playing pranks on each other or whatever. And it's so stupid to watch these people then go out and fight and be awesome. But backstage, they're morons, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like, eh.
That's another jeer where there's too many of them. There's just too many of them. They get even more like in the second season. And also, like, disclaimer, this is going to come across like I'm skewing a line here, but I think it's intentional. It brings the same problems with it that wrestling had. I'm saying that like it's taking over that time slot in a lot of markets, but it's still kind of like it's giving the shaft to the women. You know, the women aren't even like in the credits. They just happen to pop up in the locker room, and sometimes you're like, was that a woman? Because like it's so quick, you know, like, and they've never introduced her, but then you realize they place them together. But then it's like the Dragon Star tournament. You've got the white woman versus the butch woman versus the subservient Asian, and the white woman wins. Or you've got like 4 Asian guys. They all are related. You have two sets of brothers. All of them have like natural disaster names. So I'm like, which one is tsunami? Which one is earthquake? I can't keep them straight, and the show doesn't really want us to. There's a double cross at the very end that is like left on a cliffhanger where it's supposed to shock you. And I'm like, which one was that? He's in street clothes. I don't know who he is.
Yeah, like it does get very confusing. Plus, when they are in costume to set them apart, they're really goofy looking. Like a lot of them, like half the costumes, like for example, the Warlock character, he wears a purple jumpsuit with stars all over it. He looks like the original Cookie Crisp wizard. Shout out to all the community fans listening out there who remember when Troy makes his comment about not even being alive when that was in use. But anyway, then there's a guy named Panther who had a claw tattooed on his chest, and he would wear fangs, you know, and he would like
or Bam, who the best I can see, he wears like a workout suit with Bam on the chest, not in the center. It's kind of like the Izod thing where it's the sound effect from comics. It just says Bam. I never saw Bam fight. Bam was just always in the back training for a fight. Like they were making us wait for season 3 for Bam to finally like Bam us with his awesomeness.
Well, there's Yin Yang Man, and that was the most disappointing backstory. They're like, he's been drawing yin yang symbols his whole life.
No, it's more than that, because his backstory was hilarious because he's been drawing yin yang symbols, but he was doing tournaments, and one day he has Jessica Jones's alias origin. Driving home from a tournament, they get in a car accident, like an oncoming car, and his father hadn't made him wear a seatbelt. But from what we can tell in the hospital, the parents are fine. Like nothing happened to them, but he lost an eye. So then he's like, oh man, now I can't do martial arts anymore because I got this eye patch, and all the kids are calling him Cyclops. So he just like went back into his shell and went back to drawing yin yang symbols. And then he's at a tournament as like a grown man drawing yin yang symbols. And like this guy next to him was like, hey buddy, because he's a terrible actor. He looks like he's like a trucker. He's got that like Jim Carrey as Reginald Denny on In Living Color. Like he's like, hey, why don't you get out there? I can't. I've got this handicap. Well, you don't know what you can do until you try. Spoiler alert, that guy's in a wheelchair. So he goes out and he wins his tournament in the wheelchair. And then Yin Yang Man's like, well, after I saw what Wheelchair Man could do, he never learned his name. He doesn't even tell us after Bobby did that thing. Like, after I saw what Wheelchair Man could do, that's when I recommitted myself to martial arts. Suddenly, he's not in the eye patch anymore. He didn't lose an eye. His vision just kind of blurry. Like, so he didn't even have like a real scar from his origin story.
Well, he does start wearing the yin yang eye patch, but the story should have been he embraced the name that the bullies gave him, and he's Cyclops. Because what does Yin Yang Man have to do at all with his persona, except that he drew yin yang symbols all the time? Yeah, so I mean, that's pretty lame. And then you have the Tatanka of the group, Great Wolf, who's just this, you know, real cute looking guy with Southern accent. He's like a cool guy, but it's just like, why are you doing the whole gimmick, you know?
And I don't even think Great Wolf is native. I think that's one of those situations like, what is it, in Predator or is it Alien, where like the woman was Jewish all this time and she was just like taking all these roles from Puerto Rican women. You know, like, it's that same deal. I think they found that guy in like Texas. Like he's not giving me, I don't know.
Yeah, it was
the acting's bad, the casting's bad.
Unfortunately so. And again, like I'm going to talk about that in Show Doctors, but it's kind of like you got to give up one for the other, it seems, in most cases. So, Will, why don't we find out, is there a way to fix this show? Let's come into the arena as the Show Doctors. So I will say that I don't know that there's a lot you could do with this concept as it is, just from my perspective, because to get real martial arts action, you have to sacrifice charisma in most cases. The ones who have both become a movie star. If you wanted good actors, the fighting skill is likely going to be subpar or look very choreographed. If you went to straight competition, there would be so many like safety restrictions that require everyone to wear headgear and pads and mouth guards that would look stupid. So I think to make it work, it would have to be reimagined as what would happen if you got sucked into a fighting video game. So basically Captain N, the game master for the 90s. So this is my setup. You have a teenage fighter, it's a 25-year-old, but he's a teenager, and he is the star of the show. He gets troned into a video game by the villain, the ultimate end boss of the game, who has become sentient and wants to break out of this electronic prison. Now the villain poses as a wise mentor, and he tells the kid he needs to collect all the key symbols for his dragon belt in order to win the game and be sent home. But in actuality, the villain is going to inhabit the kid's body when he's released into the real world. That's like the sinister plan behind it. But each episode would have the kid being trained by a new fighter in the digital world, maybe even occasionally like Wreck-It Ralph style hopping to different fighting game cabinets every once in a while, allowing him to develop his skills. But when someone at the arcade puts in a quarter or like a token in the WMAC Masters machine, and this would always be at the end of the episode, he would get sucked back in and he'd have to fight that player from the real world. They pick their favorite character and it would somehow relate to the story or what he was learning. And then, this is 1997, so he'd probably be fighting clunky early CGI characters, but it would seem very exciting in the moment. And we would say, oh, that's so awesome. But yeah, so that is my WMAC Masters reboot.
Okay. How many seasons does that get?
I don't know. It's probably first run syndication. So we'll give it 2 or 3.
Okay. I like that. I like that. Mine is also first run syndication, because that's really all you can do with these things. Are you familiar, because this has come up a lot today, Mortal Kombat? Did you ever see Mortal Kombat Conquest?
Oh, no. What's
so
that one?
A lot of people aren't familiar with this. Yeah, we got the Mortal Kombat movie, but around this time, I would say it's probably like 97, 98, maybe 98, 99, Mortal Kombat Conquest is a 1-hour weekly syndicated series. It got 1 season, and it's considered a prequel to the franchise because I think all the characters we care about were tied up with film rights. So it's Kung Lao going against Shao Kahn. And like Kung Lao was played by the actor who goes on to be Prince Charming in the Brandy Cinderella, that Disney movie. So like it's basically the adventures of Kung Lao as he's trying to defend the Earth realm and all this stuff. I would give that same basic treatment to WMAC Masters. It wouldn't just be this like competition fighter versus fighter one-on-one deal. It really would get into, we got to shrink the cast. There's too many of them. I would love no more than 6, but you probably got to have like 8 that you really like cycle through. But you've got to have like one focal point, I guess, one hero. And based on this time, it's not going to be Herb Perez. It's probably going to be Chris Casamassa. You know? But we will see everyone's journey. So it's like there will be the episode that shows what happened to Machine, but it's not going to be as like hokey because we're not playing to 5-year-olds now. And like maybe we'll throw in an angle of like he came from a gang because that's what they would do. Like we don't know any of that about him. He's just this black guy who knew martial arts. But like, nah, he came from the crime-ridden streets of South Central LA and all this stuff. And it's about like how they find out about the tournament, like how they need to get there and what they hope to achieve by winning it. Like we were saying here, everybody wants that legitimacy of like kind of like the Johnny Cage. He's an actor, but he wants to show he's the real deal. Each one of them wants to win for a different reason. Maybe to prove to their father who wasn't around, or to show their mom that this is what they've been doing late at night throughout high school, that kind of deal. But also, the problem I have is like the era, because there's not a whole lot of, we can't get too diverse with it. We're not going to have the openly gay character. We could have the closeted gay martial artist who feels that the courage and confidence they would get by winning would help them reveal a secret to their loved ones. That's the veiled language of 97, you know? But like, that's really what I want, because I am fascinated. Like, really, I'm cheating so I can build up the world of the WMAC. We're never really told what this thing is, what it means, how do they find out about it? And I like a good conspiracy storyline, but they don't handle it well. But it's like, why is Jukido outlawed? Like, it's a rebel faction, but it's also it's a martial arts style that's forbidden by the WMAC. Why is that? Was maybe one of the founders of the WMAC the inventor of Jukido, and maybe there was like a heel turn and he unseated the good leader of the WMAC? Like, we need that. And I need to know more about the structure. Maybe this thing gets to like season 3. We found out the WMAC ain't a great organization to begin with, because that'd be a great flip. It's not that Jukido infiltrated the WMAC. It was Jukido the whole time. And it was the WMAC was unwittingly infiltrated by the good faction, you know, because they were trying to like make something good out of its like ingredients, but that never came to pass. So now these fighters have to like fulfill the legacy to like bring the WMAC up to what it always should have been. And so we could do a thing, especially based on this time, a stylized one-on-one fight per episode. It's your Megazord battle. So like everything is played straight, like late 90s syndicated action, until the one-on-one battle, where we will do power bar overlays on the screen and it will become a real life video game. But like that would be what set it apart. Like most of the budget would go into that sequence where we would find out like, oh, that cost $3 million an episode. We'd be like, what? Just because of how expensive things were back then. But like that's what I want to see. My WMAC Masters airs between Thunder in Paradise and Baywatch every Saturday and Sunday morning on your local UHF channel.
I love it. WMAC Origins or something. Yeah. It's good stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, it was very interesting to go back and explore this series. Because again, I mean, as a kid, you're tuning in for one reason, and then it turns out there wasn't another reason to tune in. But maybe someday somebody will resurrect it, use some of our ideas here. But either way, next time around, we are geared up for the holidays by discussing the adventures of a jolly, rotund fellow who liked to laugh. Of course, we're talking about the Drew Carey Show. So stay tuned, TV lovers. Will and I are very excited to get into this 90s sitcom, get back into that world. So we'll close out the year strong for sure. In the meantime, stay connected with us. We are on social media at Remember Show Pod. Share your memories of WMAC Masters. We'd love to hear about it. But also, spread the word. If you're not subscribed on your favorite podcatcher, go find Remember That Show with a question mark. Hit subscribe, hit follow, whatever you need to do so that you don't miss an episode. We want to also connect you with our personal social media accounts if you want to see our ramblings on a weekly basis. So you can find me at Hoju Coolander. Will, what's your online key symbol?
I'm at William B. West everywhere that matters.
So until next time, we're changing the channel.
This has been a presentation of Geekster Media.